Welcome back to Liz and Sandro's Marketing Podcast. We're the podcast that helps your small business stay on top of what's going on in the world of digital marketing, including things like SEO, reputation management, social media, and so much more. Today, Liz is talking about the very important GDPR.
Yes, we mentioned this in an episode a couple weeks ago. I know Sandro and I have both been doing a lot more research on this topic so we could speak intelligently about it and make some good recommendations for you. So GDPR stands for General Data Protection Regulation. Just a quick recap, this is European Union regulation that affects what companies can and can't do with people's data. As a consumer, this is going to give you more control over how your data is collected and used. Yes, this is European Union regulation, but it will affect businesses outside of the EU. That's because many businesses collect information about EU residents. I think if you were to dig into some of your own data, you may find that you have some foreign or European Union residents on your list. So definitely check that out. But like I said, Sandro and I have been doing a little bit more research so we can provide some good recommendations to you. Actually, one interesting thing that Sandro confirmed was the date that this regulation took effect and when it's actually being enforced.
Correct. The date this went into law is April 14th, 2016. So a little over 2 years ago, but it's being enforced here in the next day or so, May 25th, 2018.
So yeah, this has been in place for a while, and it's kind of crazy that we're only hearing about this for the first time, in the last month and a half. Before I get into some of the nitty gritty, I do want to preface all of this by reminding our listeners that we are not attorneys, and you should definitely speak to a trusted attorney as it relates specifically to your business. I listened to a webinar last week that was presented by two attorneys. They did a fantastic job of breaking it all down and giving two very simple yet concrete suggestions, and I wanted to share those with you today. I will also link their website in the show notes for you. So there's the first step one was to update your privacy policy. And from what I understand, this is not as simple as dropping an extra paragraph into your existing privacy policy. There is some GDPR compliant language that you need to incorporate. Again, talk to an expert. I can't speak to that specifically, but a very simple and concrete action step for you to take is to update your privacy policy. Step two is to update how you get consent from people who join your mailing list or request a piece of content from you. So essentially what this means is, in the past, I think we've all generally operated under this idea of implied consent. That checkbox, that invisible checkbox was selected. And if you signed up for anything, suddenly you were on the master mailing list getting any and all pieces of content from a company. Well, with GDPR, that's no longer allowable. Again, I want to say, if you look through your list and you say, you know what, I'm not dealing with anybody from the EU, you can probably ignore all of this. But if you're unsure or you find some individuals who are residents of the EU, these will be important steps to take. Again, I will link to the two attorneys that I mentioned. I'll link to their webinar. It was fantastic. They actually walked the webinar attendees through a full example of what that looks like. If somebody signs up for a piece of content, that extra checkbox of, yes, I want to get all your other content too, that is a new checkbox that needs to be added. You can't just simply add them. Again, there's no more of this implied consent.
And it can't be pre-checked either.
Correct. Yeah. The user, the consumer physically has to check that box. So it's interesting. Sandra and I, as we were chatting about this episode, it really kind of throws a wrench into the whole HubSpot inbound marketing approach to marketing that's become so popular lately. It'll be really interesting to see how this applies.
Correct. And three other ways that I wanted to reference that this may affect you. Again, this is only if if you're doing business in the European Union or with European Union people, or you have a lot of European Union clients, if you're a mom and pop pizza shop in Detroit, then you really don't have to worry too much about this at this point. But 3 other ways that this could affect you: if you do referral deals, so if you do a refer a friend type of deal to get a discount, well, you can't just give out your friends' information anymore without their consent. So I would just avoid all that. Second, marketing automation. So if you use automation to re-engage people, if they've been inactive for you for a while, you should look to get permission from them once more to begin marketing to them, instead of just, automatically starting to market to them if you haven't heard from them in like a year or so, or a good amount of time. And finally, gated content. Liz mentioned HubSpot, but basically the GDPR does not allow you to block content on your site if a person does not want to give you information. So I'm going to quote the Moz article I got this from, and it said, while the GDPR doesn't completely eliminate the possibility of gated content, there are now higher standards for collecting user information. If you have gated content, you need to be able to prove that the information you collect is necessary for you to provide the deliverable. So for example, if you have a webinar, you need their email address to send them a link. That's fine. But if you want to show them a white paper or a piece of research, but only if they give you their email address, that is not allowed, because you can just show them a PDF without collecting their email address. So this is going to affect a lot of companies like HubSpot, like some shadier people who try to collect email addresses in shady ways, or buying email lists. Things like that are just not going to be happening anymore.
And what I think is interesting, I can't remember where I heard this, but I know that there are people that make the argument of saying, just put your best content out there. Just publish it. For free. Yeah. Don't gate it. Just put it out there. Yeah. Just put your best content out there, publish it, skip the gated content piece. People are still going to subscribe to your mailing list, and they're still going to want to hire you. So it's an interesting approach, and one that may become more popular now that GDPR is taking effect or about to be enforced.
So while I'd like to say this is our last episode on GDPR, chances are it's not. I'm sure we'll find out how this shakes out. And basically, we as marketers, there have been so many shady things going on out there. Some people are saying we deserve this because there's just so much spam email and shady practices for marketing going on. So
much. Yeah, we've all experienced some shady marketing tactics. I know my email address has ended up on lists, and I have no idea how it ended up there. So yeah, maybe we do have this coming. The other thing we should point out is that there are going to be penalties. Financial penalties. What are those going to be again?
I read somewhere that they could be as high as 4 billion euros, which is a lot of money for violating these penalties. There's a lot of stiff financial penalties for this.
And obviously, the regulating agencies are going to go after the companies with deep pockets. Facebook, Apple, Google, those companies. Do I think, to your point, the mom and pop pizza shop in Detroit that isn't following this? No, I don't think they're going to face penalties. But still, better to be safe than sorry. Put these new privacy precautions in place and just go ahead and get compliant.
And to be aware, because those rules may be coming to the United States. You never know. And thank you for joining us. Make sure you speak to an attorney if you think you have any questions, because we definitely do not know everything. We're just going on what we read, and we are definitely, as Liz said, not attorneys. Anyways, thank you again for joining us. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we have an email address with the newish website. If you have any questions, if they're about GDPR, talk to your lawyer. If they're about other things, digital marketing, you can send them to us. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time.